Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for the World of Pinot Noir WOPN Wine Month, week 3, believe it or not. Hopefully you guys have all of your wines ready, and we're going to be talking about the Central Coast tonight. Let me tell you, we've got some really fun personalities on here. They all have each other's wines, so they can't wait to taste along with you. And you might hear some insider stories this evening. And there's some pretty fun stories with the camaraderie between these 3 winemakers. We're gonna wait just a couple minutes here, let everyone get in. And we've got some exciting announcements to kick off tonight.
Drum roll, please.
All right, we are right straight up 6 o'clock. I think we've got the majority of the folks that are going to be joining us this evening. Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for week 3 of World of Pinot Noir Wine Month. So honored once again to have David Glancy, our master sommelier and certified wine educator with us, and of course, founder of the San Francisco Wine School. David, I just can't thank you enough. We really putting the context around all these various seminars in this really special sommelier case of wine that our Somm team has curated. So we thank you so much for that.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So tonight we're going to be focusing on the Central Coast. We're really passionate about the Central Coast. It's our home. It's the home to these winemakers here that are with us. It's the home of World of Pinot Noir. If we were all gathering physically, we would be joining each other at the Ritz-Carlton Bacara on the Central Coast. Some people like to call it, it's this great area that the weather is absolutely phenomenal right now. So we're going to dive in to Pinot on the Central Coast tonight. But before I turn it over to David to introduce our amazing panelists, I wanted to announce a new sponsor that has come on this year that joined us kind of midway through, Corvin. So those of you that may be familiar, oh, David's showing off his Corvin. Thank you, David. Awesome. The purpose of Corvin is really to extend the everyday wines that you have. So often you don't want to open up that special bottle. You want to save it for the right dinner party. This really allows you to enjoy a glass of wine at your pace, on your time, see how the wines are aging and evolving, and you can match the wine to your mood, your dinner, or the weather, or maybe just because you wanted to taste and see what that 2017 Pinot Noir from such and such is really enjoying. Thanks to our folks at Corvin, we are actually going to be giving away 2 of their pivot systems tonight. So those of you who are live joining us, we've actually got you noted in our attendee list. We want to hear from you, but we're going to be doing a random drawing, and we're going to be announcing who those winners are at the end of the session tonight. But in case you're interested in learning more about Corvin, we encourage you to go on to their Instagram and start following them. And of course, we'd love it if you would follow World of Pinot Instagram if you're not already. So I'm excited to give away a couple of the new pivot systems for Corvin tonight as we move through our discussion. So without further ado, David Glancy, thank you again so much. I am turning it over to you and to introduce our esteemed panelists.
Excellent. Thank you so much, and really appreciate you having me here to do these 4 seminars every Wednesday. And of course, thanks to the panelists for being here and everyone for attending. So I'm going to do a super quick intro of the 3 panelists, and then lay the groundwork, sort of, paint a picture of what the comparison is between the 3 regions today. And then we're going to go to each of the panelists, and they're going to correct the lies I told about their background and the lies I've told about their regions. So, and we'll go through and taste the wines and have some fun. And there's Q&A as we go through the Q&A, but also at the end. So I am the founder of San Francisco Wine School, started in 2011, and we'll talk about that a little bit at the end. But getting right into the trio here. Greg.Brewer is the founder and winemaker at Brewer-Clifton, works in every aspect of the winery, from vineyard to market, and gives everything equal priority. I loved this one line. I've got to give a part of his mantra, if you will, from his bio, because he had the most Zen bio. He reveres the repetition and monastic nature of the winemaking craft, and after 20 years in the business, is firmly committed to the immediate task at hand. That's fun. I liked it. So he started his career, of course, as a French instructor at UC Santa Barbara, and that led him to learn winemaking at Santa Barbara Winery starting in 1991. He created Brewer-Clifton with his original partner, Steve Clifton, in 1996. Designed Melville, where he worked as winemaker from 97 to 15, created Diatom, focusing on starkly raised Chardonnay. Okay, as well as, I might need your help, Igai Takaha, which is marketed predominantly in Japan. How'd I do?
That's perfect. That's great.
I faked that. Okay. And all of his career has been dedicated to the Santa Rita Hills AVA, which he helped establish in 97. Fantastic enough, then his buddy Eric Johnson is winemaker at Talley Vineyards, raised on a family farm in Los Banos, California, so not so very far away. Graduated from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo in wine and viticulture and agricultural business management. Sounds like a fun dual major. Joined Talley in 2007 as in the tasting room, then became a harvest intern later that year, then served as an enologist until 2010 when he became the winemaker. That is the awesome starting as the busboy or dishwasher and becoming the GM story. I love that. Serves on the board of directors of the World of Pinot and is a member of the Cal Poly Wine and Viticultural Advisory Council. Has traveled to France, Italy, New Zealand, Argentina, and Chile to explore wine regions and or work harvests. And then, last but not least, Cory Waller. He is the winemaker at Eden Rift. We're going to start with his wine today. Raised in the town of Hollister, which is just a few miles away from the winery, Eden Rift. Grew up exploring the forest canyons and riverbeds of Cienega Valley, and he knows the back roads of this area like few others. He favors the fruit of vines that struggle and produce smaller yet delineated yields. In the cellar, neutral vessels, native yeast, and varying degrees of stem inclusion. His mentors in wine include Tony Soter, Josh Bergstrom, and Jim Prosser of Oregon. He's performed stages at New Zealand's Neudorf and Martinborough Vineyards and was assistant winemaker at Calera, which is also super close to Eden Rift. That's the quick story of these great guys. So all close together. So I think we can jump on into the slides here. I thought this one was fun, and I've included every week, and you'll see it again next week if you're a weekly attendee. But Andrei Chelatov, tremendously influential in the Napa Valley and beyond, 60s, 70s, 80s, even into 90s. He said God made Cabernet Sauvignon and the devil made Pinot Noir. I don't think he had anything against Pinot or thought that it was evil. It's just difficult. So, the only accurate aspect of sideways, that Pinot Noir is harder to grow and harder to guide into a finished wine than Cabernet. As great as they both are, Cabernet is just easier. That's all. Let's move on. So Pinot Noir around the world, just giving you a ranking of the top 10. It has grown lots and lots of places. Not the #1 grape in the world, but still an international traveler. United States, second place after France, where the grape comes from originally. Let's move on. And preferred climates, I like to say cool to moderate climates. Vitis vinifera, the species of grape that we make fine wines from, not we, you make fine wines from, thrives at 30 to 50 degrees latitude. But Pinot Noir is a little more picky about its climate, and most, not all, but most of the fine wine Pinot regions are 34 to 48 degrees latitude. So a slightly tighter belt, if you will. And in warmer places, it hugs to the cooler portions of it, like coastal portions when we're talking about the Central Coast, for sure. And we can move on. So here are the latitudes of all of the 12 wines in the WOPN case. And bracketed there are the 3 from this week, because we jumped into one region this time instead of doing a global or back and forth or an old world type thing. We've got Cienega Valley, Arroyo Grande, and Lompoc representing Santa Barbara here as the 3 places where these wines come from. And you see it's pretty tight in latitude, from 34 to 36 degrees latitude. You could look at this and assume that I've told you the whole story, that latitude's all that matters, and that Cienega Valley is going to be the coolest and Lompoc the hottest. But that's not all we got to look at. Life isn't that simple. So longitudes, well, longitudes don't matter at all. Not worth a damn. It's proximity to the coast, really. And in other places, any other influence that could cause coolness. So pictured here, small, but all 3 regions for today, showing that they all have relative proximity to the coast, which wasn't true for our session 2 weeks ago. But it's varying degrees, from Arroyo Grande being the closest to the coast at 8 miles away, Santa Rita Hills at 12 miles away, and the Cienega Valley at 20 miles away. Now, what is complicating that a little bit is that Santa Rita Hills has that transverse mountain range that does allow cool breezes and fog in quite readily. Arroyo Grande, it's a gap in the coastal range. It's low elevation, easy enough for fog and cool breezes to sneak in. But Cienega Valley has the Gavilon mountain range in the way. There is still a little bit that sneaks around, but it's more protected, more inland. And there we go. So what does that mean for temperatures? Between latitude and longitude, we actually end up in pretty close to the same answer here with some slight differences. So Santa Rita Hills and Arroyo Grande, the temperature range is super close, 52 to 72 and 50 to 73. And looking at that, Santa Rita Hills purely in zone 1, Arroyo Grande in zone 2, mostly zone 2, but ranging from 1 to 3. And we'll talk about that more. It's a broader range in that area. Cienega Valley, the lows are about the same, but the highs are nearly 10 degrees higher. So solid zone 2, and that makes sense based on it being protected by the Gavilon range. Other factors, rain, clouds, fog, sunshine, whatever. Mail delivery, no, that's not what we're dealing with. But elevation, we could throw into the mix, which I didn't do in the slides. But as far as rain, clouds, and fog, well, at least rain, all 3 of these regions are pretty similar. So 16 inches of rain a year, 17, 14. And that doesn't really matter, because in the summer, I said in the slides, less than 1/4 inch a month during the growing season. How about 0 most of the time? And, a 1/100th of an inch, it's really almost nothing in all 3 places during the growing season. Now, Santa Rita Hills gets fog in the morning and evening. Arroyo Grande is really in the lower elevations, but when you get near Lake Lopez, it's not as much of a factor. And then Cienega Valley just gets a little bit of evening fog, but not as much of an influence, certainly not during the daytime. And I think that gets us ready to roll into California. So just a little bit of stats. One, we're showing the Central Coast map in relation to the rest of California, running from San Francisco down to Santa Barbara. Big, big area. But just to give sort of a benchmark. So Pinot Noir in 1982 was the 11th most widely planted grape in California after Ruby Cabernet. Who's had a good glass of Ruby Cabernet lately? For giggles, in 1933, Ruby Cabernet was the most widely planted grape. All right, so we move forward to 2016. By then, Pinot Noir had moved up to the 3rd most widely planted grape, where it has stayed ever since, after Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. So a massive, massive expansion. And we can't blame it all on sideways, but that is a big piece of it, 2004. But we certainly have UC Davis's Winkler-Amarine heat summation scale in the 1960s, identifying Monterey and Santa Barbara areas as really, really important areas, cool climate for Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. That was sort of the first big boom. but that's it. Let's move on. So here is the Central Coast, 325 miles long, 45 miles at its widest, with part or all of 10 counties. And it is too big to be meaningful. You see Central Coast on a label. You don't know if you're getting cool climate or hot climate, because there is a very, very big difference between, say, Morro Bay and Cambria and Paso Robles. And the Central Coast extends even east of that. So it's too wide to be meaningful. And some of the counties aren't actually on the coast. Let's go to the next one. So zooming in, we are ready to talk about Cory's wine. So quick overview. Let's see, we're seeing here where Eden Rift is in the red on this map. White outline there for the Cienega Valley AVA overall, which is in San Benito County, just south of Hollister and just to the east of Monterey. You see the Monterey Bay there in the town of Monterey. Salinas Valley is sort of heart of Monterey there. On that opposite mountain range, that would be to the southwest of Cienega Valley. That range is the Santa Lucia Highlands. And then just to the south of Cienega Valley on the Gabilan Range, at the very top is Mount Harlan, and just over the top, overlapping into Monterey, would be Chalone. So Chalone, Mount Harlan are both looking at Santa Lucia Highlands, and Cienega Valley sort of tucked just over the side, but also high elevation, as you can tell from that map. Interesting place, with 11 wineries in the entire county, yet 7 AVAs. So wine students, be prepared to have fun. And just for giggles, I showed the nesting of the AVAs, that there is a San Benito AVA in San Benito County with Cienega Valley inside of that. And actually my lime kiln, I think that bullet is accidentally moved because it's not within Cienega Valley, I don't think. But Piscinus and Cienega Valley and lime kiln are all within San Benito. Anyway, we move on and get to the story of Eden Rift. So Cory, how many lies did I tell?
Actually, you did quite well, and I don't really have anything else to say, so thank you.
Good night. Mic drop.
So yeah, lime kiln right there. It's funny because we do have a lot of AVAs within San Benito County, but they're all monopoles. You have Mount Harlan, you have lime kiln. Mount Harlan is Calera, lime kiln is basically Ann's Vineyard. So, it's back in the day in the early 80s when the AVAs were first introduced. And so everybody got on that board, but there's only a couple vineyards out here on Cienega Valley alone, but this place is historically been kind of quietly known by wine geeks, and a lot of people are starting to take notice of that. And there's a lot of people buying grapes from here, and it's really kind of cool to see this whole area develop over time because it's finally getting its due notice. So as far as obviously you said we're located 20 miles from the Monterey Bay, which is about 100 miles south of San Francisco for some people who don't know. And we're nestled in it's about the winery is 1,200 feet itself into the east side of the Gabilan Range, and it goes up to 1,600 feet. The place was historically interesting enough. This is one of the oldest continuously running vineyards in the country. It was planted in 1849, and it's gone through several owners. But Eden Rift itself was established in 2016 by Christian Pillsbury, who came from Coravin. And we've just got on this label, got on everything. We've grafted over 41 acres. The site itself is on 500 acres, and there's about 118 acres planted, 75% of which is Pinot, about 18% of Chardonnay, and a few little small bits of other stuff just for fun. The oldest vines we have on property were from 1906. We have some old vines in, which if you are kind of questioning how you have Zin and Pinot on the same property, it's a very marginal climate for the Zin, and to get it fully ripe is a challenge. But I like it because it's an old world style, but I digress. We've planted 9 different clones of Pinot. We're trying to kind of push. We have the Dijon clones. We have 115, 777, 828, 667, all that stuff. But we've kind of pushed more to the focus of a lot of the heritage clones, and like the Swan, Calera, Mount Eden, Martini, Wente. Either way, we have dozens of exposures here, so it's just a really diverse area that we're on. And as you see, I will say that like you were spot on with the temperatures, because we do get like mid to low 80s as our highs, and our averages are high 40s, low 50s. We do, however, get a strong breeze every day in the spring and the summer, which it's like clockwork. It comes in at 3 o'clock, and you guys probably know that northwesterly wind. And it's really one of the only reasons we can grow Pinot out here, because we're not so reliant on the diurnal shift that you know, by 3 o'clock, those grapes, the cooling effect it has is pretty tremendous. But we do get really strong shifts. I mean, during harvest, we're getting down to the mid to low 40s at times. And I think people tend to not realize how important those nighttime temperatures are for grapes. They're just as important as sun. But one of the corrections I do have, we do get a lot of morning fog, but it tends to blow off earlier. So like where you have in Arroyo Grande, or you have Lompoc, where they have to do a lot of leaf pulling in the morning, we do not, because it blows off early enough. So we do get a lot of evening ripening in there, which is great for us because it's a little bit of a protection with the heat spikes. It actually just, for us, we can hang stuff a little bit longer, because there's times where either way, the vines, you know, just start either shutting down or just aren't delivering as much. And actually, we don't see a huge spike in bricks. But yeah, so in our rainfall, it generally is, I think it used to be like 17%, now it's like 14. So you corrected that. Anyways, our name, actually, if anybody wants to know what we are, our name is derived from, it's an homage to John Steinbeck, east of Eden, and Rift. We're on the San Andreas Fault, so we're sitting here on the cusp of igneous and sedimentary rock, and we literally have a dolomite quarry right next to us. And if anybody doesn't know, dolomite and limestone are almost identical in composition, and we have it just abundantly here on this property. And it's actually, if you're going on Google Earth, you can find us through this big white spot right next to us. So I mean, if anybody doesn't know, limestone is usually what they use to amend soils. People buy this stuff, and they're buying stuff that's naturally here. So we have kind of a good little cushion with us. And this particular wine, do you want me to talk about this wine?
Yeah, let's jump into it.
Okay, I'll jump into it. So we're drinking the Landsdale, the 2018 Landsdale. This was so we have massive terrace here where there's, you know, they're extremely hard to farm. And we have about 20% of our property is on terraces. And these walls are taller than me. And this particular block was grafted in 2016. And it's about 6.5 acres. And we've actually started to farm this organically, because I don't know if anybody knows, with terraces, we have, you know, really sandy soils up top, and there's basically, it's all drainage. There's no retention. So we've been putting a lot of organic matter back into these sites and trying to get water retention there, rather than just throwing water. And we're philosophically trying to kind of push over to organic in these vineyards. And it's a really, these vineyards, I find this wine to be very special to me, because it's just super labor intensive. Our vineyard manager, Sandy Matthews, puts a lot of work into these things. In this block, we usually look at it in 6 sections, but now we're looking at it almost in 12, because if you're on terraces, you have one vine out here and you have the wall right here and the vines next to it. There's no cover crop in there. So it makes it extremely difficult to plant on those hillsides, because they're so steep, and you're trying to build a little bit of something for erosion control. But the stuff on the terrace side tends to get a lot more heat exposure because it's reflecting off the dirt. So we're not now literally having to look at every other row as the same. And now we're looking at 12 different spots in this vineyard. And it's absolutely crazy. Just, it's a lot of work. and our yields are so low that it's kind of like a head scratcher, but I love this. Like you said, I do like the low yielding kind of just, I appreciate these heritage clones. Anyways, this is the Calera clone on this particular wine. It's southeast facing. It's anywhere from, I think, 1,300 feet to 1,500 feet. It's a pretty steep terrace, and just watching them with the tractors is pretty impressive. But with this particular wine in 18, it was a late bud break. The rainfall was pretty on par with our average. But we had, I think, all across the board in California, I'm pretty sure Eric and Greg will agree with me at this point. Like, there was higher TAs and higher MLs, Maliks that year. But it was, I mean, we picked this wine, when we picked it 6 different times, you know, the pH was so low, and this wine is just ripping acidity. So it's a little bit challenging in that regard, and it's a lower pH than normal, but I love this wine because I think it's a good age worthy. It's got the whole cluster. It's just density. It's got what you would want from these wines.
Yeah, I think it's lovely. It's and I'd love to hear what Greg and Eric have to say, but you know, it's got the acidity, but it does have ripe fruit at the same time. You know, the stem inclusion, you know, gives it some structure, but I would not say it's bitter by any stretch. It's just, it's very nuanced. I think it's really, really well done.
Thank you. I mean, this wine is meant, this vineyard in particular is meant to not necessarily be super approachable right now. I want something that has good ageability, that has a structure, it has a tannins, it has good focus, it has, you know, the acidity is just the nature of the byproduct of the year. And, you know, and this vineyard in particular, I've noticed, you know, I don't see a strong pH shift with whole cluster inclusion, which you generally see. So I've had to kind of learn the hard way from that. And I ended up with a pH of 3.4, and I'm okay with that. I really actually appreciate that. And I think it's a good ageable wine. It's just a little bit, Christian and I fundamentally agree on the fact that we want something that's a few of our vineyards that are kind of a little bit unapproachable right now.
And just a question. So you mentioned grafting here. Did you field graft the Pinot onto all that Sangiovese and Pinot Grigio that was growing there before you arrived?
This was actually Zinfandel. It was on SO4 rootstock, and this one we grafted over. Yes, and that was these were the first 2 blocks that we grafted over in 2016, and the remaining Sangiovese and Merlot all got grafted over the following year. Wow. And it's just, so as a, you know, there was Merlot here. It just, as a perspective, it was here in 2016. We didn't obviously produce anything from it, but it was really incredibly challenging to ripen. And I don't know if you've ever had unripe Merlot, but it's vegetal.
Yes. Cool. Well, unless Eric or Greg have any questions, maybe we move to Eric. Talking about Arroyo Grande, and I stole this map from Slow Wine Country, and there's a reason for that. It's hard to find great Arroyo Grande maps, but you see it in the bottom right corner, and it looks like there's only Phantom Rivers and Letitia there, but it goes up to the top. Above that, you see the actual Arroyo Grande Valley where Talley is, near the line with Edna Valley, which is just north of that. And then you go north of that on 101 and you get to the town of San Luis Obispo, and then north of that, Paso Robles. So the big issue here for me is, that it's 16 miles long, sort of a northwest to southeast exposure. So on the coastal portion, which is lower elevation, it is much, much cooler. But some 2/3 of the AVA and where the acreage of grapes is in that zone too, and sort of that sweet spot in the middle. And then you get to the far east at higher elevation by Lake Lopez, and it's pretty damn hot. And you're getting, more Syrah, Petite Syrah in over there. So that's kind of an unusual scenario. So even getting weather data on Arroyo Grande was a little harder for me. And cool that there's, uplifted ocean floor that is the topsoil in both Edna Valley and the center to western portion of Arroyo Grande. And all of this will be part of the new San Luis Obispo Coast AVA when that gets approved soon. So, Eric, anything else? Tell us your story.
Yeah. Well, Cory, your wine was killer per usual. So
thank you.
Definitely say that. I really like the dark fruit and the dark fruit finesse, and then having that the great whole cluster component. I think just really it complements it all. So fantastic wine. I will keep drinking it all night long. Yeah. So Talley Vineyards. Yeah, we Rio Grande Valley, Edna Valley. I mean, we get looped into Edna Valley quite a bit. We do own vineyards in Edna Valley as well. Oliver's Vineyard, Stone Corral. But the Rio Grande Valley essentially is a valley that runs east-west for all intents and purposes. And it is kind of wild, as you mentioned, David, because, you kind of start over a Letitia and then you fade on down as you go down the valley, you hit us. And, Letitia and us, we are doing Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. I think in 1982, we did have some Cabernet Sauvignon. It did not, you talk about unripe Merlot, it's the same thing, but, it's jalapenos, I guess you could say, a little bell pepper action. Not good. It is quite cool where we are, but if you keep on going down, as you mentioned, Lopez Lake, you get past there, and then you're in a totally different area of Arroyo Grande Valley, where Saucedo Canyon is, which they have vines from the 1800s, Zinfandel vines from the 1800s, and they have no problem ripening those. There is some random other plantings that are out there, but it's a totally different world, I would say. But when they were getting the appellation going, you need to get other wineries and you get other vineyards together. And because it was in that one valley together, it was very similar, except for the fact that it gets so much warmer as you get away from the coast. Right. And so it's very interesting because really there's three, I guess Phantom Rivers is there as well. I'll call it four, but three main wineries that are in the area. Talley started planting in 1982. First vintage was 1986. As Brian will say, they did Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, but the largest case production they did was Sauvignon Blanc. Which still thrives at Talley. I had the luxury of making Sauvignon Blanc with some Simeon and some Cab Franc from 1982. In my first couple of years, delicious. I would say more of like Bordeaux Blanc style over there. We've now moved our Sauv Blanc to the Edna Valley, but mainly we are about Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. It was created as a Burgundy house. That is what Brian and his father, Don, and his mother, Rosemary, wanted to do. And so it was the perfect place. It's a great little nook. As you can see by this really killer picture, this is Rosemary's Vineyard. And as you look the top right, kind of where the Talley Vineyards is, that's where the ocean is. Those clouds that you can see on the top, that's the ocean. Talley Vineyards winery is about 8 miles. Rosemary is a little bit closer, about 7. And, our other vineyards can get as close as 6, depending on where you're at. So we do get this really, intense coastal characteristics when we're during our farming year, because it depends on when we're at, right? So right now it's cold and windy, very cold and windy. Wind coming from the northwest, as Cory stated. We get a lot of that in California. So our wind comes from essentially Morro Bay, climbs over the mountains, and just, if you're at Rincon Vineyard, which is a couple of hills, it just kind of just torches through them, right? Whereas Rosemary's Vineyard, it is a little more protected, but it's open to the Arroyo Grande. So it's our coolest vineyard by far. It opens up to the ocean, so you're getting a lot of that fog. So a lot of morning fog, and then afternoon fog, especially as you get towards in June. That's where it's really, we are classic June gloom at Talley. It sits there, and we may only have 4 hours of like actual sun. So it's interesting, which is good. I want hang time. I'm all for it. We're all good with that. But it is quite cool, which is great, because we love preserving natural acidity. That's our jam, right? And so, which all of us, we love natural acidity on here. And so this helps us out a lot. And so we were able to do that. So, with Rosemary's Vineyard in particular, because I'm looking at this beautiful, beautiful picture, it was planted in 1987, by Don Talley. So a lot of the front portion that you see, I guess one thing I'll say is the brown rows is farmland. Talley is, there's Talley Farms and Talley Vineyards. We are a farming family. Yeah, exactly. All those brown spots, those are row crops, bell peppers, cilantro. We do some flowers. We do all sorts of stuff, frankly. I don't work for Talley Farms, so I'll stop saying we. I steal produce from them. So, to be honest, produce is pretty killer in the summer. Heirloom tomatoes, peppers. We won't get into that. But the hillsides, for the most part, are all grapevines. They didn't know what to plant on hillsides, and until they met a guy from UC Davis, Steve Rasmussen. He's like, oh, I'm 22. Like, we studied wine, and at Davis, you should plant vines. And so that's what they kind of did. And so this is very hilly. And I think the main thing is because you can see the soil pretty good. It's white. It's shale. We have a lot of shale. It's very shaly clay loam, if you want to look at it. And it depends on where you're at. So if you're in that front portion of it, that's, towards the kind of row crops, that is chunky shale, big rocks of shale. That is what it is. And as you come through, we always say rosemary is like a bowl, like a half bowl, right? And so as you come through the bowl, it gets from really chunky shale, and it gets really fine and fine and fine. So it's more like a powder. It's like a white powder. As you get towards this lower section of this picture. For the most part, it's the hillsides are a lot of Pinot Noir, the valley floors or the stuff that has gradual kind of slopes, that's Chardonnay. But, most of the stuff is from 87, 91, essentially. And we're very heavy in the 2A Vadensville clone. That is Talley's base. Doesn't matter which wine we do. We've always liked it. We take cuttings from our Rosemaries and put it there. We put it everywhere else. It's kind of become our base. We have all sorts of clones. It is fun to play around with clones, but that's kind of our base for Rosemaries. Let's just dive into the actual wine. So because of rosemary being so exposed, it tends to have really dark berries, black for the most part, thicker skins, highest acid Pinot vineyard that we farm, and can have the most tannins. I love whole cluster, but I do not do any whole cluster on this. Every time I have done it, it has failed miserably. And that is, some vineyards just don't work, frankly. And it always sits up top. I don't want Sims sitting up top. And, historically, I'm the third winemaker at Talley. So historically, this has been 100% destemmed, and we've loved it. So I keep it that way. I still experiment, but that's kind of how we do it. We do all native fermentation, primary, secondary. Our whole approach is really just grow some kick-ass grapes and just kind of guide it to bottle, frankly. We don't filter, we don't fine. We just want to kind of show you what does this area taste like? What does this vineyard taste like? And so that's our whole thing at Talley. I mean, when you have a picture like that, you know, that beautiful picture, you don't need to do anything. It doesn't need to be about me. It's a very, very ideal spot for Pinot Noir. So it lends itself to making my job very easy. So, you know, we age it for about 15 months, you know, 15, 16 months depending on the vintage, and you know, 35% new French oak, bottled, unfined, unfiltered. And yeah, and I think, you know, 2018 was a long year, by the way, a long, cold year. So I think Pinot Noir worked out the best in that vintage because it did really preserve the acid and tannins. Chardonnay, you know, Chardonnay sat out there a little bit longer, but we pick them at different times. So it's quite interesting. But yeah, 2018 Rosemary's Pinot Noir. I'm digging it.
It's yeah, it's your vineyards are so great that they don't even need you, right? So.
Well, since Brian's not on here, yeah, you're right. Yeah.
I'm just kidding. Just don't talk yourself out of the job.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, yeah.
But the wine is lovely, and I think like the Eden Rift, you know, there's elegance and structure together at the same time. You know, your wine to me very quickly is visually a little more pale in color than the Eden Rift, but it's got the weight, it's got the mouthfeel. You know, some lovely red fruit and florals in there, a little tea, just that lovely tea note. Super fun wine. Yeah.
Yeah. I think you're getting a lot of structure out of this wine. I mean, I agree with this. You don't need to go whole cluster. You got plenty of structure in this.
Yeah. Yeah. You get it. Yeah. It would just be too much. It sit on.
And there's something so like detailed and pure about it. You know, it feels kind of like my suede jacket and my silk scarf. I mean, it has power, but there's also such like delineated purity and like a gentle hand behind it. It's really, I love it. I mean, it's always a benchmark, and this is no different. It's epic.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. That's awesome. Record that. Thank you.
It is recorded.
Like an episode of a cooking show. It's like Master Chef. You know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
The apricot sauce was a little.
Yeah.
We do have a question for Eric. Perfect. If you could rotate the barrels, could the cluster in work?
If I could rotate the barrels, would the whole cluster work? You mean like, I could rotate like different barrels? Is that what they're asking? I'm worried about the fact that I probably know who this is. So I should probably just say, yeah. No, I don't. I don't think oak's not going to help it either. I think that just, even neutral barrels. I mean, if you want to do tannins on tannins, it just, you know, some things, I mean, there's great Chamboule, like a lot of Chamboule is just 100% destemmed, and it is for a reason, and it works out that way. And, you know, I love stems, but if it doesn't work out, why would I force something on anything? And I don't think oak is the answer, even though I do use some oak. Whoever this is asking the question.
Perhaps if there were a financial sponsor, you could do a small experimentation.
Yeah, I mean, if people want to send me money, I'm all for it. Like, I'll give you my Venmo, you know, so.
Awesome. Okay, we have another question for you, Eric. Okay, what vintages were a struggle, and how did you overcome the challenges?
Okay, yeah, interesting. A lot of my struggles come from labor, or like my staff leaving before harvest, not because they don't like me, but because, you know, things happen. But no, I would say honestly, the hardest was 09. I was the assistant at the time, and we got these huge heat spikes in Labor Day, and we really didn't have much off. And then we had to pick everything. And, you know, Leslie Mead was the winemaker at the time. We started picking everything, and it was frankly the most I've ever worked ever. And it was just, you know, you had to do things you didn't want to do. I like to grow great grapes and pick them at the right time, I guess is my ideal situation. I think that's pretty much all of our ideal situations. And that didn't happen. And so it was really hard, but, you know, we worked at it. And again, it takes a lot of work and did a lot of different things, and to try to facilitate that from just continuously picking to, I mean, honestly, throwing a whole cluster, a lot of things helps when you have ripe years. And yeah, that kind of got us through. So good question.
Beautiful. I think we should probably, to respect the timelines, move to the next slide. So we're going to get into Greg's wine. This is a quick shot of showing all of Santa Barbara County, and sort of bottom center would be the Santa Rita Hills within the San Ynez Valley. But I just wanted to show exactly where the mouse is moving. And so north of that is the Santa Maria Valley. But the San Ynez Valley, Santa Rita Hills is just the westernmost portion of the San Ynez Valley. We'll skip the rest and go to the next slide. So here is a map of the AVA. And of note, these boundaries were changed in 2019. I'm forgetting which year the boundaries changed. It was recent, but the far eastern portion, or northeastern corner, more or less, expanded by just a little bit, bringing in Pence and a few others. But on the map, we see where the various Brewer-Clifton vineyards are. And basically, the Santa Rita Hills are this, you know, mountain in the middle, and there are two valleys going north and south of the mountain. The vineyards are never on the top of that. And these vineyards, all of these vineyards, are on the northern side of it. And fog and cool breezes kind of hit the mountain and wiggle around it. So extensive fog impact here. And more than 60% of the planting is Pinot Noir here, but Chardonnay is pretty rocking here as well. Greg, correct me.
No, that was all awesome. I do have to say though, David, when you were first going through all the different weather things, I got lulled into like feeling like you were a weathercaster, like on the news. It was so funny, and it was like, oh, in the Gavilon Range, we're gonna see this today, and down in Arroyo Grande, oh, get your jackets, it's gonna be a little cooler. It was funny. It's like your tone, I was kind of lulled into it. It was great.
Well, it was either that or I was a used car salesman, one or the other.
Benefit of the doubt, brother. You know, I was gonna keep it lifted. No, I first and foremost, thank you all for having me. What a thrill to be involved with WOPN. And as always, what a beautiful organization and situation. And thank you for including me again, and to be on a panel with people such as these is really, it's such an honor. It's really, really, it's so flattering. And I think, you know, one thing too, the only thing that was wrong, and it was actually wrong on our end in the bio, it was so funny. There's a line which said, like, for the last 20 years of his career, and it's been 30. But I think it's one of those things, it's about time to start lying about it. I'm gonna start saying like 10 years, you know what I mean? I don't come off so old. So that was funny. But I think most importantly, in all seriousness, with regards to my relationship in Santa Rita Hills, I think it's something that ultimately unites the three of us. I was thinking about this today. It's really beautiful. And what I'm trying to say is, when you ultimately commit yourself to a place, much like a significant other, you have confidence in that person, right? You don't go on a Tinder date and then propose, yeah, unless you have a lot of good Pinot or whatever. I mean, you have confidence, you have faith, you know, you can rely on that entity. And when you put a ring on it, that commitment and the value of that relationship increases, right? Your relationship to that person's relationship to you. And how beautiful it is on this panel, right? Learning about, you know, Cory's background, knowing Mike, his brother's a Calera, by the way. I mean, talk about like hometown awesome pride, right? So they are a product of that place. They are part of that quilt work. Yeah, and then with Eric, it seems like he's been at Talley even longer because he's so like devotedly embedded in that system, and he's such a part of Talley in a very, very profound way. And then, you know, for 30 years, I've worked on that highway. And so it's similar for me. And I think with that confidence, much like a significant other, you can really surrender. You can be ultimately vulnerable. You can be very naked. You can be very raw, right? You share secrets. You know, you don't have to hide anything anymore. And you make decisions that are based on the rhythms of something, you know? So, you know, we're talking about clones, we're talking about stems. It's also pretty funny, I do have to say, it was so funny, beautiful, like how times can change. Hearing Eric like defending why he doesn't use stems was so funny, because for the better part of my life, I've defended why we do. And it's so funny, like the tides have kind of turned and he's like backpedaling. It's cool, Chambo's cool without stems. He's like pleading his case for de-stemming. It was so funny. It was really endearing. And so anyway, so that's my relationship with Santa Rita. You know, I was raised in LA. I wasn't raised here. But, you know, from the age of 21 on, you know, starting at the Santa Barbara Winery tasting room, and their vineyards are actually on this screen. So you're kind of looking at the 3D vineyard, and then before you get up on that hill, which is something else actually, that's the original Lafon vineyard, the original Santa Barbara Winery. So professionally, I'm born right in that picture at the age of 21 as a French teacher at UCSB. My first vineyard experience was right where you're looking. And so as a result, I love other areas. I mean, I remember like, I had like Josh Jensen's poster on my wall, and going to Calera for the first time in '93 was like a crazy like adrenaline rush. Meeting Burt Williams. I mean, you know, the heroes in our business. And, you know, of course, the Talleys, I used to rock a Talley cap everywhere I went. I mean, there are so many beautiful appellations all over the place, Oregon, Otago, Burgundy, wherever. And I'm here, and I've only worked here, and I'll only work here. Yeah, and that's it. And so we started this project 26 years ago with $12,000. And then, you know, we worked hard and kind of figured it out and had other jobs to make a living along the way. And here we are. We were well received, fortunately. Had some ups and downs, of course, like any relationship. Sometimes I thought I could do no wrong, and sometimes when I was really, really scared, and everything in the middle. But that's it. One thing we've always stuck to, though, is the ocean and our relationship with it. Everything at Brewer-Clifton is reliant upon removing myself, quieting my voice, minimizing my importance, because I'm not that important. You know, I think it's maybe steeped in low self-esteem or something, but it's about raising everything the exact same every year, without any bias or prejudice, vintage to vintage, block to block, clone to clone. This Pinot's raised all this whole cluster, a long time in fermenter from one of our estate vineyards called Machado, and then ultimately aged in barrels that are between 15 and 25 years old. And not moved and all that stuff, you know, but the most important thing is that, you know, it's the Machado family. We planted this vineyard in '08. And I love that they trust us with their land. We lease their land. We lease 15 acres of their land on which we planted this vineyard that we own. And when we do a designate, when we kind of plant a vineyard, before we even plant the vineyard, if there's a little portion of it that feels right, we'll be like, oh, whoa, that will be the designate. And then, you know, anything we don't need volumetrically, of course, will go into our primary appellation wine. But it's not about us blending. We don't do that because I don't want to be the arbiter or judge of anything. I just want to do things the exact same way in a very kind of faith-based, ritual, discipline, repetition manner. So there's one little knoll on the property. It's 2 clones that work great for us because of the importance of stems within our vernacular. One is called 37 that I got from my friend Mary Edwards. I used to hang out with her at other Pinot events when I worked at Melville because it's alphabetical. And so that was cool. And she's awesome. I love she spells her name Merry. It just makes me smile. And then the other clone in this is 459, which is also not that well known, originally from the Jura of all places. I traded the wood with Sea Smoke, some 37 for 459. It was like baseball cards, like my third baseman for their catcher and whatever. And so that's the clonal makeup of this. And I loved how Cory was referencing kind of, and Talley too, for that matter, like, you know, in Cory's case, the kind of importance of heritage things like Calera, Mount Eden, et cetera, Swan, and that becoming like an anchor within their voice and their aesthetic. And of course, the two-way story at Talley, which makes perfect sense. And then for us, really, it's like this 37 459 thing, which just is, it just resonates with us. It makes sense for us based on everything else that we do. Yeah, and that's that. And whole cluster for me, where we are anyway, we pick relatively ripe. And for me anyway, whole cluster is akin to a corset. You know, I think Santa Rita Hills Pinot Noir can be very dense. It can be very dark. It can be very rich and very, very dramatic. And a lot of friends render the wines that way, and they're hugely successful on all levels, you know, marketing, sales, impact, sexiness. I mean, they're incredible wines. And that's one wonderful route to go. In our case, the whole cluster it's like a corset. So picture this beautiful curvature of fruit, beautiful curves on a body, cinched up and kind of corseted by the stem inclusion, rendering the situation a bit more savory by nature, you know, a little kind of maybe spice element aromatically, and then a kind of drying, like tea-like presence on the mouth. Much like the way anything that's seared happens, you know, soft protein, you sear it, same thing, you're not cooking it, you're barely warming it, but you're propping it up. Or the roll of soy sauce when it's gently brushed on a fish at a sushi bar. Same thing, you know, the soy, the relationship of the soy to the fattiness of that flesh is comparable to this kind of meat on the bone upbringing of the Pinot that we've always done, kind of come hell or high water, even though we've gotten a lot of flack for it when we started. And now it's like normal, it's pretty funny. And so that's that. And the Machados, and the Machado, I also love the importance, you know, much like Talley, you know, the Eden Riff thing is so nice. The Steinbeck reference is so beautiful. Again, an anchor to their land, an anchor to that history and legacy. It's such a beautiful, respectful, awesome, inspiring thing to do. And then in Talley's case with Rosemary's, of course, you know, Don and Rosemary doing that and like celebrating the family and Rosemary and her importance within that system. And then in my case here, it's the Machado family. So I'm a latchkey kid from LA that didn't know seasons existed when I grew up. You know, I'm listening to Depeche Mode and The Cure and wearing eyeliner and drinking like Corona and bottles and James. And so, but now here I am in a rural setting and borrowing the land from the Machado family who came to town in 1917 from Portugal, row crops, cattle, et cetera. And now, you know, with their trust in us, we can kind of, I love that I'm talking about the Machado family right now, right? It's like celebrating their legacy, propelling their name and legacy around the world through this kind of punctuated product of produce, which I think is really valuable. And that's that.
So fun. I am so thrilled that all three of you liked the Central Coast so much that you put a ring on it. Okay. I learned that today. All right. Good fun. But the wine, lovely. The aromatics are just so lifted. There's so much there. And it, you know, it's 2 years older than the other two wines, and you can't tell that at all. Very vibrant and fresh. And you know, yes, that tea leaf, you're getting that on the finish. Lovely structure and velvety, absolutely velvety mouthfeel. Fun.
Yeah,
three very different
power,
Pinots.
Right? I mean, sorry, I apologize, David. Elegant power. It is a beautiful wine that it does have so much power, but it's light on its feet kind of power, and I've always really enjoyed these wines. This is great. The tea, you know, obviously, and it's interesting because it's probably more on the red area, you know, and I like it. It's cool because I think you're about to say these wines are all very different, right?
Yeah,
and they are. So
I think this wine's incredibly sexy.
Yeah.
And I like all these wines. Well, mine, your too. I like there's incredible focus within these wines. And just for our viewers to explain, when I say focus, there's a theme that goes throughout the wine that when you hit aromatically in the front of the mouth, the mid palate, the finish, there's a flow to this. And it's just something really just there's integration. And I really just find this wine just wholeheartedly it just flows. It's sexy.
It's a bit of a Beyonce. Since we put a ring on. I think fun also to point out, Greg, you have done the wax seals for a long time now. And, you know, I know you've got somewhere on your website that talks about a corkscrew just going straight through. But I will emphasize that you don't want a Coravin straight through. So I cut mine off so that I could caravan, because I faithfully do that, because I limit myself to 2 bottles a night. I can't drink 3. Just kidding, less than that. And Stacy, there we are. So just super fast, shameless plug. San Francisco Wine School, I started it in 2011 to train the trade. And since then have been adding more and more consumer classes, corporate events, social events. We have 18 different credential programs, and we do have some people who are just consumers or enthusiasts who do the credential programs, but a lot of trade. The Glancy Wine Education Foundation was launched last year, and we raised over $100,000 in scholarship funds that now we have a lot of the trade who are unemployed coming back to us through scholarships. But we will do anything relating to beverage that is legal anywhere. So if anyone wants to bring us on the space shuttle to do a wine seminar, we're all good, in person and online, and love being at WOPN normally in person. And that is the last time I saw people, was at WOPN, and then haven't flown or driven long distance since. But that's it. Come check us out. And I think we're on to Q&A. If there is more torturous questions.
So not seeing any currently in the Q&A chat. I know Lauren is getting our winner for our Corvins figured out here. I'm going to just give a couple of remarks regarding the silent auction. So if you haven't checked out our silent auction, please do so. I just wanted to preview a couple of the lots tonight by these amazing winemakers here. First of all, Greg, you have generously donated a pair, not one, but 2 1.5 liters, a 2017 and a 2018 Brewer-Clifton Santa Rita Hills Pinot Noir. I'm thinking those are probably, you can't get anymore. They must be sold out, especially in the 1.5 liter segment. So that is currently on the auction block. Thank you, Greg, for that amazing donation. Moving on to Cory, he has generously donated a 1.5 liter of the 2018 Eden Rift Reserve Pinot Noir. Again, I bet that's a seller collector, something that you probably can't buy through regular retail channels. Thank you for your generous donation to WOPN, and guys, snatch that up. I mean, it's a steal right now as I look at the pricing and the opportunity there is on the silent auction block. And Eric, a pair of Talley Vineyards Rosemary Vineyard of 750s. So another opportunity to stock that cellar. And thank you for your donation on that front as well. So some really great donations. These lots and several others, also including a couple new lots that we just added with Corvin, thanks to their generous donation, as well as United Airlines. United came in and gave us some airline tickets that we've paired with wine, because some of you are ready to travel again. So we really thank our airline sponsor, United Airlines. But check out that silent auction. I hate to say it, there's some steals going on right now, guys. So check it out. It all goes to a good cause, back to the mission of World of Pinot Noir, which is about education and promotion of this fantastic grape that we're on. So with that, Lauren, how's it looking? Any Q&A that came in that we need to address before we announce our winners?
Looks like we do have one Q&A. David wants to know, are we competitors or not? How do you view that on the Central Coast?
I need them both.
Good answer.
Listen, like the wine industry, I've always told people, once I got into the wine industry for 2 years, I figured it out. It's like, it's one of those industries where we don't compete. We're all buddies. I mean, we hang out, World of Pinot Noir hang out. Anytime we see each other, we hang out. And I think we drink each other's wine, and, who drinks one wine, right? It's not like like a Bud Light thing or Coors Light thing. We mix it up, and we all learn more when we do drink each other's wine, and we hit each other up for information and help. That's what winemakers are there for. And if you are friends with, even if you're not friends, usually people help you out in the industry. It's one of those weird industries where theoretically you are competitors, but you're just not. I mean, I never feel like any other winery or winemaker is a competitor, and it's rad. I love these guys. I've known both these guys for a very long time. So
yeah, and I think additionally too, just to kind of layer on that a bit, something that's so beautiful about this craft is that you can never replicate your work, right? So there's no secrecy, there's no need. I mean, these wines will never exist again, these specific wines. And so there's something really beautiful about that. There's something very liberating about that, right? There's no need to keep anything close to the chest. And it's immensely flattering. I mentioned, almost 30 years ago, going to Calera for the first time, and how graciously I was received, and they walked me through everything, and how we all feel. I can speak for the two colleagues. When you receive an overture like that from someone else, like, oh, hey, I love what you do. Can I come up and check it out and learn from whatever? It's like, I get so excited. I mean, it's the biggest ego stroke, awesome kind of thing ever, to share that information and to keep kind of furthering this cause, especially with Pinot Noir. And it's a beautiful thing.
And you guys aren't tremendously far apart, and, frankly, championing not just Pinot Noir, but the Central Coast, sort of all ships rise with the tide. You're getting people to look at Pinot, and specifically Central Coast Pinot. I think you guys are too friendly, that you're scaring our viewers that you might not be truly competing. But I think it's a great
point. Wait till
point.
You see me hug Eric. That'll really scare him.
We're too far away. Nobody comes out to Hollister. I'll say philosophically, from a winemaking standpoint, we all are cut from the same cloth, where we're purists, and we are hands off in winemaking and let the vineyards speak for themselves. If you do a good job out there, you have variations, and every year is you're given what you're given, and you can only do so much with it. But for us, I feel like we're cheerleaders of each other. It's like, I remember doing a tasting one time, and Mike Etzel comes in and is like, he said, and like you said, high tides float all ships. He's waiting for those big scores. And it really is a neighborly thing. And we're all avid fans of each other. And I like, if somebody gets success in my neighbor, I compete with my brother, but I'm his biggest cheerleader. If he gets a good score, or if he gets good praise on something, or he does something great, if I have a wine that's kick ass, I tell him. I'm the first person to tell him. And he does the same for me. And it's the same way with these guys. It's a good camaraderie.
And to Greg's point, the no secrets. If anyone copied the harvest date, the trellising methods, the rootstock, the clone, fermentation temperatures, stem inclusion or not, blend of clonal diversity, if someone took it as the recipe for success, it would yield a different dish at a different site.
Yep.
Well, guys, thank you so much. This has been awesome. And I think this type of conversation is exactly why we love working in the wine business. So just to hear this camaraderie that's happening, I think it's time to announce a couple of winners. Lauren, can I turn it over to you to talk about who's tonight's winner of our Coravin Pivot Systems?
Yes, so we're giving away two tonight, and it's Neil Rowe and Sue Bayer. Congratulations, and we'll be in contact with you to get you your Coravin.
Sue.
Awesome. And luckily we have your addresses because we've already sent you wine. So hopefully this Coravin will be a great for your additional wine cellar features. Well, that does round out week 3 of our WOPN Wine Case Seminars. I just can't thank you enough, David, for your time. Eric, Cory, and Greg, thank you so much for sharing your expertise and your camaraderie and these beautiful, beautiful wines. If for some reason you want to go back and listen to these guys again, we did record this session. So you'll see it on our website at worldofpinotnoir.com under our virtual recordings section. If one of your friends missed it, have them sign on and really check out the excitement and camaraderie between this group. And we have one more week of WOPN Wine Month for this particular case, and there are several other seminars that are happening. So check out our website at worldofpinotnoir.com. We are halfway through the month, but and we are halfway done, but we've got lots of things in store for you. So thank you so much. Check out the silent auction. Have a great week, and cheers to all of you.
And next week for sure, Champagne, German Pinot, and the other Pinot, and Burgundy. Just Burgundy.
Sounds great. Bye, everybody.
Ciao.
Have a good one.
Thank you.
You guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.